Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast. And in this episode, we're going to give you our review for Run, Rabbit, Run, starring Sarah Snook, now streaming on Netflix. This was an interesting film, to say the least. Dylan, why don't we start off with your thoughts?
I expected it to be... It was creepy. It had creepy elements in it. My problem with it is that I feel like, well, number one, the ending could have been better, to be honest with you. And number two, I feel like they have a lot of tropes that I've seen in other psychological thrillers. Like, we just reviewed The Boogeyman.
You're right.
And they have like a lot of elements like where the music builds up, to create suspense.
Yeah.
I thought the actors were actually pretty good. Sarah Snook, this was interesting seeing her in this kind of role because we're used to her from Succession.
Mm-hmm.
And even the daughter, played by Lily Latour, she actually was really believable.
Yes.
As Mia or Alice. But what were your thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, it is. I think sometimes these movies with a limited cast, you have to play with the environment a lot more, and also there has to be a lot more depth to these characters depending on the genre. So it's really important that the partnership between these two actors are really strong, and it did feel like that. I think it felt really authentic. I think Lily Latour, I don't know if this is the first thing she's in, I think she did a phenomenal job. Sarah Snook is kind of weird to see her in this after we were finished reviewing Succession. I guess this is her punishment for what she did. All right.
Good.
When she got slapped. Lily Latour did what we wanted
Sarah,
to.
no disrespect, but good.
No, yeah, good.
It's funny too because her name is Sarah.
Her name's Sarah
movie.
here. Right.
Such, was that intentional or is that...
Right, exactly. No, but she was great here. It kind of has Hannibal vibes with the aesthetic, the color grading. It's pretty dark and mysterious for the most part. I think they had an interesting idea to play with, but I think they didn't execute it that well. There was something about it that it felt very familiar to other types of movies that were similar to this. But I think it felt like a copy of it rather than its own thing. Because I did see something like this before. I feel like I have in the past.
It felt like a more disturbing movie or a more disturbing version of The Lovely Bones.
Yeah.
In a way. Because it deals with a lot of family trauma. I noticed that too, like in a lot of horror movies now, they're dealing with some aspect of family trauma and they're playing off that. So I thought it was interesting, the story was, because you think the mother, Sarah, she's, playing the victim, which she kind of is, but then you realize at the end that she's actually the cause of all this.
That was a cool twist.
And seeing how she affected her sister. And it manifests through this child, through this almost like exorcist kind of manifestation. We see the sister is like haunting her, right? And I thought at first, because it's a psychological thriller, I thought maybe that it was all in her mind at the end. But then like the daughter also has like scars on her. So unless it's like she's seeing the sister all of a sudden through her daughter, and maybe it's affecting her, and then she's actually lashing out at her daughter some way. But then there was like moments too where like they showed like the ghost of the sister like in certain shots like behind them, like when she turned the lights off or some shit. So it's like a ghost story kind of, but like I said, also deals like family trauma and like domestic violence and stuff. I thought I've seen like trends where like they try to have the kid like draw pictures. And they draw pictures like the demon or something, or like the ghost, whatever it is. I've seen that in so many horror movies now. And they did that in this film. But I thought it was interesting, though, because in this movie, the daughter draws this black shape. It's just an entire black page. And then she has like a girl sitting in it. And I thought it was interesting. I thought maybe perhaps that represents like, because the sister. So Sarah, they reveal little clues throughout the movie that she actually abused her sister and actually ended up killing her. And there was a scene where she opened up a locker and it showed the sister Alice like crouching down. So I thought perhaps like the drawing is a representation of like her like only seeing darkness, right? Because she was only in that locker for so long, and every time she would like crouch in the rabbit hole. Also, I wanted to get your thoughts on the rabbit too, because we see in the beginning Mia picks up a rabbit, and it was kind of like how she said it, like her sister would like take home animals too. But did you think there was like a deeper meaning behind the rabbit too?
I think it probably correlates to when Sarah talked about her past life in the house and her father like saying that rabbits are pests. And it probably correlates to how Sarah felt about her sister before killing her. And it's like, she's a pest, and this is why I'm chasing you. So it's like a really cruel way. And there was a lot of mention of Sarah being a monster or a bad person. So that's probably, and you know, to disregard life like that, as we do, like for like, we call these pests, rats or rabbits and this and that. I mean, it's pretty interesting concept when you think about it. It's like, oh, wow. So that's probably what it was. But at least I kind of got that. At least that was that. What do you have any other thoughts what it could have been?
I thought perhaps maybe it was like the sister herself kind of manifested in the rabbit, because there was a line earlier, they were driving and she said because also they were dealing with her grandfather passed away, and she said grandpa wanted to be reincarnated as a pelican, and we saw like a shot of a bird in the distance. So I was thinking maybe like the rabbit is kind of like the sister in a way, like keeping tabs on them, because a lot of times they focused in on that rabbit. Yeah, and I was like, why is it like so specific, right? I was like, maybe is the rabbit like a demon or some shit, or perhaps like I said, it's just like a spiritual manifestation of the sister, or something like that.
This movie, you know what it reminded me a lot of? It reminded me a lot of The Babadook. It's exactly like it kind of has that similar tone. There isn't a monster really. Where The Babadook feels very physical, you could kind of get a sense of like, oh, we don't understand the themes of that movie, but The Babadook is like this physical thing. In this movie, it's really about your past trauma and memories and how it comes back to you. And I think the rabbit is a really great reminder of that. And plus, Mia, she has a rabbit mask. And whereas Alice, I think, like you said, represents the rabbit, Mia is actually saying that she's Alice. She's wearing a rabbit mask, you know, so it's kind of on the nose there. I think... if you look at this movie and you try to make sense of it, you try to think, okay, well, let's pretend this is real life. This doesn't make any other sense. Then I think you won't really like this movie. But I think if you go into it thinking, okay, it's kind of artsy, and you know, you have to pay attention to the actual hidden meaning behind it. It does something where you don't have to look underneath its surface. It presents it in a way whereas if you have to just decipher the images that's there, you have to look at a face value, which can be a good thing. There's like little things where you kind of have to dig deeper for it, but for the most part, it's presented in, I think, a transparent way. It may be unsettling for some people because it's like, oh, I'm kind of confused. So don't go into this like kind of confused, like saying this isn't realistic whatsoever, and I would have slapped that little girl and I would have done this and that. It's supposed to be thought-provoking, and it's also supposed to keep you in the moment, right? I mean, we know obviously Sarah has some weird past. Something had happened in the past before, but is it a ghost story? It could be, but I don't think that's the point. I think it's really showing like our past traumas being reincarnated or reintroduced in, you know, the future, or coming back for you. And as the past dies, though, right? So we see Sarah's mom. She has dementia and she's forgetting her memory and stuff. The past is kind of going away, but there are things that will not go away. And it was that she ultimately killed her sister, and that trauma and that guilt comes back. So yeah, I mean, it presented that in a transparent way. It was okay. I just felt like it was too slow at times. I think they did that for the horror element, and I wasn't really down for it. I think they could have did it in a different way. It sometimes became tedious because the little girl, she was fine. Mia was kind of annoying. Sometimes you just felt like, Sarah, why don't you discipline your daughter, right? Why don't you talk to the father at all? You know, because it's usually it happens, right? This is the scenario. It's like, yeah, so my family was here, whatever. I hate you. And as she like runs, it slaps her, and as she runs away and sleeps, and it's like, why you did that? Oh, baby bunny. And
I'll
as
tell
she
you right now,
goes,
if that was an Asian family, that this movie would never have. My door would have been
Shot
broken down. They would.
that's the end.
They
It's
would
like
have ripped that mask off my face.
it's a 20-minute movie.
Right? No, but it's true what you said. It's like you can't really like treat it like a realistic movie, right? Because it's
Right.
supposed to be like, beyond. It's supposed to be like this almost spiritual movie
Yeah.
or a
yeah.
supernatural movie, but in
Right.
in a more extreme form of, how do I say it? Revelation in
Right.
a way, right? Because it like you said, it's exposing her guilt, right?
Mhm.
Because she never really talked about it with anybody. She kind of
Mhm.
like kept it to herself, right? And that it kind of like harbored and lingered. So in a way, it could be like a weird way of saying like how we kind of don't take accountability and we kind of like let
Mhm.
it fester over the years, and it starts to become visual to a point, right? We start seeing things, we start hallucinating, perhaps.
That's the ghost, because the ghost
That's the
always remains
ghost.
in the past. That's the ghost, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. My thing was with the ending though, because we saw the sister was holding hands with Mia, and
That was scary, actually. That was weird.
yeah, it was disturbing too. But at the same time, I'm like, well, why didn't she just run out the house and grab her? Like she's literally
Yeah.
tapping on the window, like Mia.
Right.
Yeah, like bitch, just run out the house and grab her. Like what?
Yeah, I think that it reminded me a lot of, God, there was a movie made by Denis, for the director from Dune, and basically I forgot, it was with Jake Gyllenhaal, and at the very end, Jake comes out and then he sees like his wife or girlfriend is like a huge spider and like backs up, and it's supposed to represent something, and I felt like this was a very artsy way of ending it to end the point, but also it was very dreamlike too. It wasn't really in the physical or the actual dream. Like again, this is a lot of people when they see movies, they want to look at something that's continuous and represents real life and stuff, but that's not all films. Like this clearly isn't like that. I think that wasn't a dream, or that wasn't actually physical. That was just something presenting its point. It's like when you paint something in a painting, right? I mean, it doesn't really make sense, but it's there to convey the actual point to something.
Yeah, I think it has a nice balance or a nice contrast between like innocence and darkness in a
Sure,
way,
yeah.
using the child as a conduit for these very dark themes, right? And even the rabbit itself, because I think people, when we think of rabbits, we think of like purity because they're like very
Right.
white or like very innocent, right? So to
Mhm.
take that, and I think and Donnie Darko did this as well with the theme of rabbits too. It's like taking those inner demons and turning it on its head. So I did
Right.
appreciate that, and I think for the most part the movie does a good job of like setting up these very visual images in a way, and they do good job with like the music too, to like kind of build tension in between moments, right? It's silent when it needs to be, and then there's music when
Right.
it when it's appropriate. Even like the cinematography was really good too, like just like seeing like the Australian outback. I thought that was really interesting, like good showcase of the environment, and the house too. The house itself is kind of like manifesting the sister in a way, because it's like a house has so many memories, right,
Mhm.
that we cling to. So she's trying to sell the house because she has so many bad memories, but the mom wants to keep it, right, because she only has good memories, right, because she lied to her and she said the daughter, or the sister, ran away when in actuality she was the one that murdered her. So I think it has really interesting thread lines and themes, but like I said, I feel like for as far as the horror elements go, I feel like I've seen too many familiar tropes.
That's what I was saying earlier. Yeah, it was kind of like that. Right.
It doesn't come off to me as like a thriller, right? It's a good
Exactly.
story, but I feel like it's not a good horror film, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is deep, but if you take away the horror elements, I actually think if you take away the horror elements, this will actually be probably a better movie. To be honest, I feel like this was the wrong genre to do it in, because the idea that they're playing with, it's actually brilliant, and the way how they represent things, I think it's really great. But I think the fact that it's a horror, and then we're like, in the beginning, we're kind of confused. We're like thinking, oh, is
we
this...
treat it like a horror. That's the problem.
That's what it
we
is.
treat it like a horror. When in
Yes.
fact, it's about, like that's why I compared it to Lovely Bones, because that movie was like, it was disturbing,
Right.
but it wasn't meant to scare you. It was, scare you not in the sense of like
Right.
supernatural elements, but scare you in the fact of like there are real social issues, right?
Exactly.
And that's what this movie tried to convey.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a little bit too much Babadook, and it should have been a little bit something different. I mean, well, cool to see Sarah Snook back, and congratulations to Lily Latour. Brilliant job.
Where was Tom Watkins? All this.
Where was that? That's right. He sent her to Australia. She had to change her name and everything. Yeah. Bye bye, Shiv. What would you rate this movie?
You know, now that we analyze it and talked about it, at first I was like you. I was kind of like thrown off to it, but I think I can appreciate it more for what it was trying to do. Mm-hmm. But probably if I had to rate, I'll probably give it a 6 out of 10. How about you?
Yeah, I don't think this movie is like really for everybody. If you just want to chill and watch it, I think you really have to take the time to interpret it. And once you do, I think you'll feel a little bit more fulfilled and understand the unnecessary parts of it. I think I probably give it like a 5 out of 10. To be honest, I would give it that. Yeah, 5 out of 10. I think that's reasonable.
Fair assessment.
Yeah. Well, why don't you take us away?
Well, guys, thank you for sticking around for this review of Run Rabbit Run on Netflix. Check it out if you haven't. We do a lot of horror stuff as well. We just did The Boogeyman pretty recently, so check that out. We do plenty of content, plenty of reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Leave a comment, like, share. Anything helps the channel. Akram also, just if you like horror, he did a 28 Days Later essay. It was really good. Check it out. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. Until then, thanks for having lunch with us.
See you, Bunny. I can't see shit in this day.